All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Reach Cultural Stories May. I can't believe it's already May. We are highlighting access to education and have two lovely education professionals here, Dr. Jay Samant and Tisha Chapman. I will let them do their introductions, but you know me, I am Elion. I am the program coordinator for Reach, and I also am a talent acquisition specialist with Diverse Talent, our sister organization. Really grateful to both of you for being here today. Thank you so much. And as I mentioned, really looking forward to this topic. So, Tisha, I'll start with you.
Okay. So my name is Tisha Chapman. I'm the Vice President of Student Services at Emily Griffith Technical College. We're the largest technical college in the state of Colorado, have been in existence for over 106 years. We're founded by Emily Griffith, who was a school teacher for Denver Public Schools. Um, I, our goal is we're founded on Emily Griffith, which was for all who wish to learn. And so that was her founding statement, and that is what we have lived by since the inception of the organization. Our mission is truly to get students in, get them out, and get them ready to work in the workforce with a very small amount of time and hope and no student loan debt. So that is our commitment to the community. I'd like to say we teach recession-proof jobs. The skills that we teach students are skills that you can't outsource. And even if you did, it would be very expensive. So I don't think you'd want to outsource your car to be fixed out of this country. Um, so that's kind of our premise. I if do you want me to go on about
Yeah,
okay, I
please.
don't because Dr. J, I want to give you your opportunity. um Professionally, I mean, I was always personally rather, I was always told I had to go to college. There wasn't an option. My father is a blue collar worker, and he felt that he wanted all of his children to not be in blue collar fields. So he and my mother made it their goal to make sure that all three of us were educated. And so that's, I don't know any different. Saying all that, I look at my father now, who has his own business, and he makes more money than me and my brother and sister combined, and he's a blue collar worker. So I told him I wonder if his whole push kind of was kind of backfired. We laugh about that, of course. But being a woman of color, education was what I saw as a way to better myself, better my family, and provide opportunities for other. I felt like if I was in a position that then I could then make that a possibility for others. It's very difficult, I think, when I went to college. Very few people looked like me. Very few students in the classroom looked like me. And so I've made it my life's work to make sure that I hire diverse talent, and that we are very inclusive of all students that want to walk through our doors, and that we support them through all of their needs, which I know we'll be talking about later, but culturally, linguistically, academically, socioeconomically, all of those things. And so that's that. I think that ties it up in a nutshell. So I will,
That's perfect.
Dr. J, on to you.
Yes, thank you.
That was an awesome intro, by the way.
Thank you.
Um, I'm Jay Salmanthan. So I'm the associate dean for high school to college connections at for the academic affairs division for the community college of Denver. And so primarily our department, we primarily support our concurrent enrollment programming at CCD, which allows students, high school students, to take college classes in high school that can seamlessly transfer their classes to a four-year college, or they can earn a credential and go straight to work. And so we really, our mission and vision of our department, as well as the organization, is really enhancing our concurrent enrollment programming and processes, particularly in partnership our premier partners, Denver Public Schools, but also other Denver charter school networks. We've worked also with Emily Griffith High School with concurrent enrollment. And then also we have 30 other different districts throughout Colorado, really to yield more students completing high school with a college credential, and then being able to increase the numbers of high school graduates enrolling in higher education after high school graduation. So whether it's with us at CCD or to a four-year or another two-year college, really just we have a focus specifically on students from Title I designated high schools. And so I was really just kind of drawn to CCD, really kind of learning after their mission and like programs that the college offers that really highlight in-demand careers and like pathways in the state of Colorado. And what Tisha also said really kind of highlighted with me with what she said her father was doing, because there's a lot, as I'm sure everyone is aware, just on the Colorado Talent Pipeline report that just was released. There's a lot of different apprenticeships, a lot of different other innovative jobs that are, looking outside the spectrum of just what we've considered the traditional 4-year route, that are really in high demand and competitive wages. And so I think CCD does an extraordinary job, and that's what really attracted me for traditional and non-traditional students. So for students, for example, that have taken some gap years from their education, being able to really, ascertain a credential or a certificate or a degree and could go directly to work or transfer that to a 4-year degree to continue on. I was also really drawn to CCD. I did not know this prior to actually working at CCD, but it's the only community college in the nation to share a campus with 2 other 4-year universities, as well as being a Hispanic serving institution. So I think that really makes a unique opportunity, as I've been able to work there and witness our students along with CU Denver, as well as Metro State, having those collaborative efforts, like sharing also facilities, as well as like student activities and student leadership programming. It really creates that rich, diverse community of students where like faculty, it's really faculty and staff are student center focus. I will just kind of, sorry, just go on a little bit about
Keep it
my
going.
why, if that's okay. So for me, just like my cultural background really influenced my personal and professional life. And as a lifelong educator, I immigrated to the United States originally. My parents grew up in really humble beginnings in Mumbai, India, and they faced a lot of adversity. As my father, he was born just 2 years after India gained independence from British colonization. And so really the aftermath of British colonization really led to extreme poverty, a lot of like social, economic, and gender inequalities that my parents really had to overcome. And so similar to Tisha's family, like my parents were just, being raised in humble beginnings in Mumbai, but they made like several sacrifices to ensure that my sisters and I had better opportunities to really access education. And really, they always emphasize the importance of education, that can lead to opportunities, that can lead to opening doors. And so that's really shaped my why as a lifelong educator. I feel really privileged to have that opportunity where my parents made those sacrifices. I saw the direct impact, how that's really been able to, instilling the importance of how really education can directly impact generations of like a family lineage.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much. I really appreciate you giving us the professional and personal perspectives there. And it's cool to watch both of you being in the education space. And I know CCD and each of you and Emily Griffiths, you guys have overlapped somewhat in each other's organizations. So it's cool just to have you both here. Fabulous. All right, moving on to our first question. We're going to start with, how would you define accessibility in the context of education? And what are some common barriers that individuals in your, daily life and networks face in accessing quality education? Jay, I'll start with you on this one.
Sure, this is a great question. I think like really, defining accessibility, I think about like universal design learning and like making it accessible and equitable for all of our students, whether it's students with any type of physical disabilities, with learning disabilities, accessible also to students that come from that may face economic barriers, such as financially, and also just educational barriers, like not having the access to, understanding the importance of how really education and furthering your education through whether it's a certificate or a credential or degree can really impact not just your life, but also generations of your family's lives. And so I think really that is, the accessibility and also to a quality education, and having those opportunities now that we're changing so digitally, where there's a lot of that's also creates hindrance, unfortunately, for some of our families and some of our students. And so I think that kind of leads to my thoughts about and what I've seen also just qualitatively from students and families about common barriers. Firstly, is like economic barriers, regarding like a student to be able to finance tuition. When I think about higher education, like it can be extremely expensive and unaffordable. And just other alienated, higher education costs that in order to pursue your degree. It's like I feel one of the major barriers that students often don't persist or complete their degree because it's just becoming with all the loans through living costs, like buying your own laptop now, also costs for just textbooks, for college tuition costs just to attend courses. It just becomes unbearable. And so I think those economic and financial, barriers, I think really just students to be able to access those resources is really important and crucial. In both, I'm talking about like learning both inside and outside the classroom. So like, yeah, transportation also, I'll give that as an example. For CCD, including for us staff, we have to pay if you're to park your car every day. And so, I mean, that can become extremely, another burdensome, like financial burden for a student if they're not able to access, if where they live, being able to access the light rail, and if they don't have means of transportation to come to campus and also spend money to also park their car on campus. And I know that's not unique to CCD and Aurora campus. It's kind of commonplace for many higher ed institutions. So, and then I'll also say, like, I think there's educational barriers. I see access to a quality education is another barrier students face with accessing this. And so I think, for example, like a lot we see at CCD and throughout Denver public schools and a lot of our graduates throughout Denver and Aurora, they're first generation students, high school graduates, first generation college students. And that can significantly impact how much information I think a student receives about opportunities beyond high school, as far as like in-demand careers, programs of study that are, competitive, really also how to access free resources on campus, like academic advising, our tutoring center that we have, which is really renowned at CCD, or just like as far as student scholarships and how to navigate those mentoring opportunities, like federally funded programs like TRIO. And so I think those are also, a barrier, just really ensuring that our students receive, that support discovering and navigating and being able to matriculate through those academic programs and having, learned like and having access to that. So those are probably the two I really see as big barriers, economic as well as education.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are great points. And I like what you said about kind of economically in higher education, the stack up of funds. It's like people will think, oh, that's an expensive school to go to, but parking, room and board, if you're, not close to the area, or if you're commuting, or all of that stuff, books, everything like that, it really piles up. So I think that's a really good point to make, and very important. Tisha, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with everything Dr. J said and more. Very well said. We do not even have parking. So our students have to find parking lots. And we're in downtown Denver, and we're in the process right now. Our foundation is doing an economic impact study, and then we're getting feedback from students. And the number one barrier they're talking about is transportation. The RTD light rail it's not accessible. Dr. J, you said, you were from New York. Well, we don't need to go there, right? Like fabulous transportation, we need to have that here because more and more folks are being dependent on that with the cost of insurance and cars and everything else. It's just not accessible. I would also say culturally, like we have a lot of students that, this is different. If your parents weren't educated. We also have the largest immigrant and refugee population at our organization. So a lot of students are learning English. So we're seeing the parents and then their kids, they're wanting them to get some type of certificate and move forward. But it is somewhat of a cultural barrier too for them. What does that look like? Are you going to be taken away from the family because you no longer can work, right? You're going to be in school all day. So we're also looking at how do we support that cultural differences, but also help them know that there's value into their son or daughter, as well as them continuing their education. We're dealing with food insecurity, homelessness, all of those things are really issues that are impacting students. But you're absolutely right. It's money is a big thing, and it's not, tuition is virtually free right now for a lot of programs, with a lot of state funding coming in for some credential programs. But it's those outside resources. It's childcare. It's, I have a flat tire, my car broke down. It's those support services. And I think it was hard at one point for folks to really wrap their head around that, because they're thinking, well, your tuition's paid. What's the big deal? And I said, well, think about it. If you're going to school all day, you're no longer working, possibly, or your hours are drastically reduced, but your expenses haven't been reduced. Nobody's giving you a forbearance or a deferment on paying your bills while you're in school. And so I think folks are now beginning to understand that the cost of going to school minus the tuition fees is also what's preventing. And sometimes I don't think our families and our students are really well versed in that area and prepared for those outside costs. They look at a cost of attendance and they're like, oh, okay, all they care about is tuition and fees. And it's like, well, hold on. How are you going to continue to manage all these other expenses outside of school, but also additional expenses that creep up? Books are enormous right now. Laptop, all of those things. Do you have viable Wi-Fi in your home? Do you have a laptop? Colleges are not just handing laptops out. So I think that, all of those things are barriers. And then we're seeing an increase in students with neurodiversity. And so, as you mentioned, Dr. J, about the universal design, how do we get that into all of our classrooms so that we're able to support? Because truthfully, universal design would actually help everybody because everyone has some type of learning, but it just makes it more open and accessible for everyone.
Absolutely. I love what you brought up too. And I think with childcare or people deciding to pursue a new career or educational opportunities as an adult, not in the typical college age, super important. And having the support services from childcare to, like you said, car breaking down, is this a thing I can afford right now? Is my instructor, or am I gonna not pass this course if I don't go to this one class? The flexibility and the support system that has to go around a student of any age being successful, I think that's a great point. I'm sure we could go into a million other factors, but I feel like both of you spoke really well to that. It's very multifaceted, so thank you. All right, next question, kind of going off those social impacts. In what ways do you believe access to education impacts social equality and opportunity? And how can we address disparities in access? Tisha, I'll start with you.
Sure. I think it's systemic, right? There's so many issues that are going on that by the time someone comes to us, it's like, okay, how do we support or undo all of that negative or disengagement or disenfranchisement that they had before they got here? One of the things about education, I think, for one, I always said college for me, it wasn't about who was the smartest to stay in college. It was more about who could persevere. But what it did is it opened your eyes up to see different people, different views. And, I think about our political process, that's where the laws are made. That's where changes are made. And if folks are not being educated, even gaining a certificate gives you the ability to kind of understand how things work, right? How to be engaged, how to be a critical thinker, right? To me, that's what college did for me more than anything. Nothing against my instructors. They were great, but it was more about, how do I think? How do I see the world? What do I want to change in this world? And what are the processes that go through that? The systemic and all of those things. I was reading an article in the Journal of Blacks in Higher Ed, and there was an article about teachers still rate Black students with academic abilities lower than white students with the same test scores. And so there's so many changes, I think, that we need to have happen from the time a person is born, right? And because by the time they've gotten to us and they're 18, or we have students that are 70, 80 years old coming to our institutions. There's so much that's happened before they even get to us, right? And how they view themselves and how they view the educational system. And so those are things that I think you know, for me, that's what education does, is it helps you think, and it helps you see the world differently, and exposes you to different views, and you begin to open up and learn, you know, well, maybe my way of thinking isn't not necessarily right or wrong, but it's like, I never thought about this before. How does that impact me and where I want to go and what I want to do to change? So that's, I think that's the biggest thing, but I just feel like so much is put on higher ed that it's like, okay, you have them, fix it. And it's like, well, that we can't fix it, but we definitely can work at educating and exposing them to other systems and resources and people and different ways of thought. But I don't know if higher ed is the answer. I think it has to start from birth, really.
Absolutely. I think that speaks to kind of what Jay said earlier about that education access. Like, what perspectives am I looking at life through? What have I occurred or endured throughout my life that has impacted me? Who have I learned from? I think that's systemic is a great way to label it, and super important, and also, you know, multi-layered there for sure. Great points. Jay, over to you.
Yeah, I think Tisha made really great points, and I 100% agree. You know, I kind of think about like my parents' experience and really thinking like this is really thinking about this question just as they're like a primary example of how really access to education can impact, I think, societal equality and opportunity. And um, you know, like to me, high quality education, I mean, it's a fundamental human right, and it's really the foundation which like economic development in any like country or nation it's really laid. And I think it paves the way to preventing injustices, like improving public health and really just the safety of each other. And so without it, I mean, our students and people can neither like obtain the jobs they need to sustainably support themselves nor help their communities, you know, really grow and prosper. And so I think, you know, here, particularly in our, you know, Denver, Aurora serving areas that we serve our students, we have, as Tisha mentioned, very diverse population of refugees. We have a lot of first generation students. We have students that are, you know, multi-language learners, that English is their second language. And so put on that too, I think even just more holistically beyond even Colorado, I think really just factors like underfunded schools, the lack of access to resources, like Tisha was saying with Emily Griffith parking. That's also, you know, access issue too for a lot of higher ed institutions. You know, as well as like just systemic inequalities that really I think affects the educational opportunities and outcomes for particularly our students of color. And I think those disparities really manifest in like lower academic achievement than we're seeing, the higher dropout rates, and then really just limited access to advanced courses and college preparatory programs. And so I think, you know, this is complex. And I think really to address the disparities with, you know, I think adequate funding and really comprehensive changes need to be made, not just money thrown and funding thrown, but I think it needs to be really a thought out where we're having policymakers and educators and like the communities, they really need to be able to that we serve come to collaborate in implementing strategies that really address the root causes of like the education disparities that we're seeing within our communities. And I think, you know, really prioritizing equitable education and implementing culturally responsive like teaching practices and really diversifying the teacher workforce. I mean, that's another issue we're seeing on the other side of the spectrum. You know, our staff retention, that's always difficult. When I was a former school principal, I'm sure Tisha can speak to this very well too. It's really difficult to retain staff. And mainly because, you know, I mean, they're not feeling valued based on their salary and also just of all the things that keep being put on, particularly on educators that come from diverse backgrounds, being taken on to take on some informal responsibilities for students. And so I think really just diversifying that, the teacher workforce, that could really foster more inclusive and supportive learning environment. And we could work to creating a more like inclusive educational landscape.
Yeah, I think something that you touched on there that's super important too is just representation, both as an educator and as a student. Like you said, we see higher dropout rates, lower test scores with, you know, BIPOC students. And so when you're not seeing students around you that look like you, come from the place that you are, being successful, I mean, that has to play into motivation and you feeling like you have a place in that area. So, great points, both of you. Thank you very much. All right, kind of individual organization questions here. Could you share examples of a successful initiative or strategy that you or your organization has effectively has utilized to improve access to education in your community? This could be from a current role, previous role, anything like that. Tisha, I'll start with you again on this.
Yeah, so I sit on the board of our foundation. A couple of years ago, we started what was called a 360 fund. And what it was basically those instances where a student says, I have a flat tire. They're able to come to us, we're able to get them a gift card or whatever and make that need go away, if you will, immediately. These obviously aren't long-term, we're not paying mortgages or anything, but it's, they need food. So we have food pantries, we have just the ability to really take care of those emergencies. So that seems to have really, we've done data on it, and a lot of those students that access those funds are able to continue, because you think, oh, what's the big deal about a flat tire? Well, it could be 3 or 4 days that you're out of school, and many of our programs are hour regulated by the industry and the accrediting and the licensure body. And so missing 3 days of school could mean that you have to come back and start the program all over again. So that's probably one of the largest, I think one of the biggest programs that we've implemented, and it's just working within our foundation and trying to get those needs met like right away. The other thing that we've done, we have some of our programs require licensure. Again, our foundation has stepped in and we've been able to pay for that, because again, that's that other expense, right, Dr. J? That's the other thing that students don't realize. And it's, sometimes it's $200 or $300. So we've been able to pay for their licensure, because we know that as soon as they complete their program, and the likelihood of them taking that licensure test right away, will have a higher pass rate. And so that's one area we've been able to bridge. We're fortunate our foundation is in our building on our administrative floor, if you will. My team works really closely with them. So we're able to really look at those needs immediately and to give that feedback right away and say, hey, we see this, we're kind of looking at trends. This is what's happening, like our food pantry, is a big deal. And we have a couple of campuses, so we make sure those food pantries are on each campus available for our students. So those are things that we've done. We also have what's called a supplemental academic instruction program. So again, supporting those students, having those tutors available for students who are struggling. And they're able to get what we call experts, right, in the field that know, because it's one thing to be a cosmetologist, it's another to teach someone to read. And I think people forget that. So we're able to have that cross support for the students, that yes, we're going to help you with your comprehension, but we also need to help you understand the language in which you're learning, because there's different language in hair coloring and medical and fixing a car. And so that's been also one area that we've worked out really hard to keep students in class, and it's available while they're in the program. Sometimes the tutors even go into the classroom so they can understand what's being taught, so that it's contextualized for them when they are tutoring them. So I think those are the biggest things, I think, for us right now.
Those are great. And I think that really also shows the value of being hands-on and experience, like your foundation being so close with the school itself, seeing every day the challenges that students may face. It's so important. And I feel like on the recruiting side of things, I mean, we often see it's like, oh, executive director deals with these roles. And a lot of the organizations we work with are like, we want someone who started at the bottom and worked their way through, knew every single level, and like the tutors in the classrooms, what is actually being said. It really shows the impact of being intentional and being physically in a space that you're supposed to be transforming. And it's really cool to hear that your organization's very hands-on with that. So nice. Is the 360 fund something that you guys get publicly funded? How does that work?
So it's through our foundation. So we have fundraisers, we have, donors that contribute, we have organizations.
Great.
we're kind of fortunate that we've been around forever. So it's almost like 6 degrees of separation. Someone who has known someone who went to
Yeah.
Emily Griffith. And so, but it's all incumbent upon our foundation. They do a lot of fundraising efforts, and, again, they're focused just on our needs and our students. So
That's amazing. Okay, well, fabulous. Yeah, I'll definitely have to put that in our little resources.
yes,
So anybody who's interested there.
yes,
Perfect.
thank you.
Jay, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, that's great to hear, Tisha. Yeah, we've had a few different milestones and success stories since I've been at CCD this past year. And I can first highlight, yeah, definitely with concurrent enrollment, which I think is really just an incredible opportunity for our students to, it's for free and no cost to them take college courses and credits. And so we've built over 35 school district partnerships for concurrent enrollment here this year at CCD, which is the most we've ever had. And really more in looking at like data, we've seen 17% increase in our student headcount. So high school students actually enrolling in a concurrent enrollment course, and then 24% increase in our student full-time equivalency. So that means that we have our high school students that are taking 3 or more college credit courses with us, whether it's like through online or in person. So we've seen a lot, and then we have a total of 2,789 current high school students participating in concurrent enrollment at CCD. And so I think that's really something that's been we've been proud of. There's still a lot of work to do. Particularly one thing that we're seeing as a barrier is that we have college readiness exams like Accuplacer, for example, or just some way that students have to demonstrate college readiness in order to be able to enroll in a college course. And so we are right now working similarly with our tutoring center, the Excel Zone. They've been exceptional. And we've actually piloted this year with 2 different high schools where we have a tutor go and actually support students. And then we have another option that CCD came up with, which was very innovative, I think, from like our math department, as well as like our executive leadership and tutoring center, which is like a boot camp. So it's another viable option where students, if they're not meeting the benchmarks on Accuplacer and the cuts scores to be able to demonstrate college readiness, that they could participate for free with the boot camp on our campus. And it's like goes through modules and all of that. So students are still going through that process, but also getting one-on-one support with the tutor during that time, and so that they really feel equipped and prepared if they do end up, passing and earning a passing grade at the boot camp for that course that they're going to take following that. And so we've also seen a 1.2 increase in our student headcount this year from the prior school year at CCD. So we have a total of just a little under 5,000 students, which is really exciting. I would say another kind of innovative recent success story is just our Center for Workforce Initiatives at CCD. That department has been doing exceptional work. They've really been providing direct supports and resources for adult education or adult learners through like ELL. And like also they're providing corporate training with custom classes for employers and just like professional upskilling with like career building credentials. And so we currently have at CCD a total of 187 business partners. And I think that is really phenomenal that we're continuing to try to build that specifically with career placement for our students and really for them to be able to build those connections and networking while they're a student. And that really includes partnerships. Now we have like for like our STEM pathway, social and behavioral sciences, as well as like our business pathway and manufacturing, construction, as well as like public safety and legal. So I think we've, really being able to incorporate, I've seen across our campus, and that I've also been able to fortunately have the opportunity to collaborate with a number of just career and workforce readiness events, which include we've had career fairs and just like lunch and learn series like for our students, which has also been really helpful and beneficial for our high school students that are enrolled in concurrent enrollment, that we've seen a more increase of them also participating and attending and just getting that access to just be an exposure. Another initiative I know that CCD has partnered with that's really exciting is our zero cost training for in-demand jobs. So that's where we've partnered with Career Advance Colorado in really revitalizing Colorado's healthcare and education workforce through zero cost short-term training programs at CCD. So that means like our students will have their tuition, any students that enroll in this, their fees, their course materials, all of those other costs covered, that want to pursue a degree in early childhood education, elementary education, and nursing, their LPN. And as we all know, those are really high in demand careers. I recently was building a partnership with another dean for our transfer degree agreements with UNC and CU Denver. And I asked both deans, where are like, just so that we can share with our students high in demand careers in teaching and in education. And they both said all of them. We have a teacher shortage everywhere. And so I think that's really great that we are partnering in that way as like a kind of like a state initiative. And then I will kind of like lastly say too, since I'm fairly new to CCD, this is just my first year. Something that I've seen in our strategic plan though, that I'd like to really highlight is one of our major strategies is acceptance, and like the objective is like ensuring diverse hires for staff to like achieve a workforce that really reflects our student and like community demographics, as well as increased conferred credentials for students, disaggregating that by like race, ethnicity, with a really focus on like completion for Black and our Hispanic and Latinx students. And so I know that like in order, some of the initiatives I've seen and actionable steps I've seen and I've witnessed is that we've restarted like our HSI committee. And I know that work and those specific objectives that they're working towards is like really being discussed heavily with like our executive council, leadership council, and other just advisory committees within CCD to really help minimize the achievement gaps and like discrepancies we're seeing. So I unfortunately don't really have any like data on that yet, but I just wanted to highlight that as well. I know that is something that CCD is really working towards, holistically as an entire organization.
Absolutely. And a great mission to have. Diverse Talent has a very similar mission, creating a workforce that's reflective of the world that we walk in every day. I think it's really cool that you kind of talked about the different programs that are offered too at CCD and the meeting people where they're at. So whether it's boot camp, whether it's kind of that Excel zone, whether they're ready to be fully enrolled, not fully enrolled, the flexibility in meeting people where they're at, not just saying full-time student or not. I think that really gives a lot of freedom. Do you think that, I mean, and these could both be factors, but do you think it's the strategic plan and kind of diversity initiative or the diversification of your programs and access there that you've really seen that enrollment kind of skyrocket over this last year?
I think that's a great question. I think it's a little bit of both. Um, I think that we just saw a need, and I think the college saw a need after 2020 when you started to see, and across higher education, enrollment was just declining tremendously. And I think that also gave opportunities, I think specific for community colleges all over though, really to, it looked like a much more appealing option a lot for our students, mainly because there were a lot of other things that were exacerbated that students were dealing with like younger siblings. Some students were dealing with, as we know, like paying financially the cost for things for their family, or like a combination of those things. And so I think like looking at, having an opportunity where they could still go to a local college that's local, as well as that's a little bit more also tuition. It's a much more affordable, as well as that could be much more accelerated, like direct to work. I think we've seen a lot of that, and I'm sure Tisha could speak much more better to me, having that firsthand experience with students at the high school and K through 12 level. But that was a lot of the qualitative feedback we were getting from students, and we're seeing a lot with this generation. A lot of students are really interested in the direct to work, different pathways. A lot of them have indicated that, particularly from like our early colleges and like our P-Tech program, high schools. They're really interested to, like ways that they can already start using their credential or certificate, or work towards a degree in high school so that they can go directly to work, and using those skills and really upskilling their skills. And so I think really just like we're seeing an increasing enrollment. I think it's a little bit of both. Like I think there was just a little bit more of curiosity in community college, but also I think the trying to address, that we notice that this is a gap where we're seeing these are disparities we're seeing. How do we, let's collaborate better, let's make better, stronger, robust partnerships with our high schools. Let's be seen in the high schools. Let's and have the students come for a field trip to really get exposed, not just like a tour, campus tour, but really getting an opportunity. Let's let them meet our provost and our president, who's a Latina woman, and just as far as other executive leaders that are first generation college graduates, to talk about their life experiences, the struggles they went through, the life setbacks, and how they overcame them. And I think we've been trying to think more strategically around that as a team. I've noticed, especially with our executive leadership, and I have to applaud them on that. So that's a great question you asked, but hopefully I answered that.
No, that was fabulous. And I think also, I mean, the 2020 drop off makes perfect sense, and resparking motivation and a diverse array is going to be important, whether it's, them meeting one person, them seeing the campus, them just having a conversation about what programs are offered. Tisha, I'd love to hear from you kind of on that same question. How are you seeing enrollment in your organization, and what kind of do you think the trends are, whether they're increasing or decreasing there? What have you noticed?
So I say this not to boast, but our enrollment did not drop. Our enrollment actually went up. And so I think what's happening is that, as you mentioned, Dr. J, you put it perfectly, people are wanting to get in and get a job. The whole disenfranchisement of trying to figure out how to pay for college when you're looking at $40,000-$50,000 a year. They want a skill and they want to be able to be able to work very quickly. Our rates, because we are accredited by the Council on Occupational Education, we have to meet a 60, 70. I'm probably saying that wrong. Sorry. But we have to have 60% of our students have to complete their program. 70% of them have to be employed in a job related field to their program. And then 70% have to pass their licensure exam for the programs that they have. We have 85% of our students are completing their program. 93% of them are being gainfully employed in a job related field. And 100% of our students are passing their licensure. So that is something that, we have, what we've seen, we actually are what I call landlocked. We need more space. We also, however, need faculty instructors to teach these programs. And that is a concern, because if I'm a nurse, I can make way more money being a nurse than I can coming to teach. So how are we attracting that diverse talent? How are we attracting people to come and teach? And that's kind of been our struggle. We also have the largest number of apprenticeship. We have 5,300 students that are apprentices. So any crane you see, there's probably some of Emily Griffith's students on that site. And we've worked with Metro to have like a pathway for them to actually go to Metro and get a degree to be in construction management, right? Because many of these students are earning, I have welders right now that they're being pulled out of class by employers because the demand is so great for welders. They're like, as long as you know safety and you know the basics, we'll take you, right? We'll train you up. We'll keep doing that. So those are things that we've seen definitely an increase. Healthcare, everybody wants to go into healthcare. As you mentioned, Dr. Dre, about the House Bill 22226 bill to give funding for those programs. But then a lot of students, you mentioned the exposure piece, which I think is so critical, because students are like, okay, it's free, I'm going to take it. And I'm like, but do you like blood and do you like dealing with people, right? Like those are things you need to know. And they're like, not really. Well, then let's find another alternative for you. So we're seeing definitely increase, definitely our Cosmo Barb esthetician. Our esthetician program, if we had a warehouse, it still wouldn't be enough for us to fill. We have wait list because that's particularly with our young folks, everything is about how you look, right? So it's Cosmo, it's barbering, and it's esthetician. And it's also that entrepreneurial spirit. I think that we're seeing more of an increase. They have more opportunities to make money, because there's all these different avenues. It also provides an opportunity for our justice involved students because there isn't that background check, right? Whereas there is in healthcare and also our apprenticeship programs, right? So those are things that we're seeing. We're seeing more of an increase in students with neurodiversity, students that are justice involved. But definitely our our enrollment did not go down. It actually went up. And so I would say one of the things that we're really focused on is, I remind people all the time, our strategic plan is we want to be at 90% capacity. And I remind people all the time, we always are, we're actually at 100% capacity. I said, but where we struggle, which I think is true of most colleges, is keeping them, right? So week 2, week 3, you're hearing, an instructor saying, okay, I've got 4 students dropping out. Okay, well, what's going on? So we're trying to really focus on how do we find out what's going on ahead of time. So maybe there's some interventions and some financial or other resources we can provide the student before they feel like there is no point of no return and they have to just drop. So those are the things that we're seeing more of, is just keeping them in. They all, everybody starts gung ho on that first week, and then it gets real, right? Then it's like, oh shoot, I've got to read. Yes, you do. I've got to be in class, and I've got to drive down here. Class starts at 7:30. And again, as all of us probably know on this call, our students are coming not from Denver. No one can live in Denver, right? So our students are coming from Aurora, they're coming from Adams County, they're coming from Brighton. So they're making that drive. So now it's like, okay, I have to be at class at 7:30. I'm probably going to need to leave at 6 because of the traffic. So it's like all those things that we're really trying to work with them on, to be prepared, and so they don't get frustrated and drop out. We are seeing more of an increase, I think, with our industry partners wanting to lean in. They provide us a lot of guidance on our advisory of the curriculum we should be providing. We're seeing them lean in more because they need employees, right? And so I think we've always said that education and industry needed to meet up, but I think now it's almost being forced upon them, because they're like, I need employees and I don't know where to get them. And so I feel like there's a lot more engagement. And we tell them all the time, it's great you provide scholarships, but we need mentorship. As you mentioned, Dr. J, we need that exposure. We need a lot of opportunities for our students to know what they're getting into before they get into it. No one wants a student to get into a program and decide, I don't like this. That creates even more disenfranchisement from the educational process. So those are things that we're definitely seeing an increase. And again, just wanting to get that job. And I call them the immediate gratification generation. And so if they can get in school and get out in 9 months and have a paycheck, they're good.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have an audience question kind of piggybacking off of that. And Tisha, I'll start with you on this, but what do you both hear from students or those interested in continuing education? What do you hear that they're looking for in a career? I know, Tisha, you kind of mentioned people want healthcare because of the compensation versus teaching. So other than compensation, what other factors are you seeing that you think would be important for employers to know on whether it's benefits, work-life balance? What are you guys hearing from your students?
It's definitely work-life balance. The biggest thing is they want to feel connected to the mission, right? They want to feel valued, and they want to feel that the organization they work for is ethical and moral, and they want to be treated fairly. The money is definitely, money, yes, people want to be paid and people want to be compensated for their worth, but they also want to have a sense of connection. I know I have young employees and I've got older employees, and I'm trying to manage, the younger ones want to have a really sense of community and connection. And the older ones are like, I want to come to work. I want to go home. I've done that. Right. And so how are we able to balance those different, those different generations? But from what we've been hearing from our students is pay, work-life balance, connection, and the mission. And they want to feel good about where they go to work, and they want to have that connectedness, and also transparency is a big thing too.
Awesome. No, I think all of those make sense to me. I mean, we hear that a lot in the diverse talent side of things, for sure, of what's your company culture? Is it a good culture fit? Do I relate to the mission? Is this a team I want to be working with? All very important. And it's interesting, the kind of generational difference that you witness. I feel like that's very unique. So thank you. Jay, what about you? What are you seeing?
Very similar, yeah. I think that other than the compensation is just the opportunities, feeling connected. I think particular generation has discussed and talked about when they come on campus visits to us or when we're at high schools. really just their feedback is also what are the opportunities for like technology and integrative technology. And this generation is very tech savvy, right? With social media and just having those opportunities. And so I think any of those types of collaborative opportunities is really what is going to keep them also engaged. And then feeling, yeah, like as well as also, yeah, like that work-life balance, as Tisha said, I think the mental health is something that's been emphasized a lot from this generation about, what does that look like? How is that supported? Is there support and student supports, or whether it's at a job in in an industry, is there supports for that in case that there is anything that like professional support or group support that they can go through. I think also just like programs, like a lot of them have discussed like if there's a specific certification program they need to go through or like an accelerated program, like looking at, yeah, what are ways that it's engaging, whether it's like there's digital textbooks or like if there's work-life balance in the sense of like, is there online courses if they need to recertify for something while they're working, or if they're working towards to get fully, trained in something, like, is there opportunities for that? Because a lot of them have discussed like, I have other family responsibilities and things to do. And so I still need to be earning, this other part-time job, and I have other things that I need to do family wise. So what are ways that you can accommodate, and make that I can still keep engaged, but have opportunities if it's a certification or if it's something that I need to further like post-secondary that there's multiple modes of being able to access that as in, in comparison to just like an in-person course, traditional style. And so I think those are just some of the things I heard, like specifically on top of like compensation, is really that mental health piece and like the work-life balance as well.
Absolutely. No, I think great points there. Since we are coming up a little short on time, I'm just going to bump us to the last question. Looking ahead, what do you envision as the future of accessibility to education, and how would you plan to achieve these goals, whether that's your personal mission, an organization's mission? And then what steps would you recommend to our audience would take to contribute to increasing education accessibility? Jay, I'll start with you on this one.
Sure. I think as we're moving towards a more digital world, like there's really going to be, we have to be mindful of like multiple modes of delivery as I think as like instructional leaders, but also as really preparing our students for industries and for work-based learning. And so looking at, podcasts, videos, text, like interactive digital access modules, I think that's going to really help improve the student accessibility, really as students are leveraging assistive technology to engage with like the course materials. I think also like making sure that we're offering a variety of like different assignment formats, and making like the education more accessible, more hands-on. The exposure piece that Tisha talked about is extremely invaluable. I think that there's just so many careers and certifications as we've brought in students to our campus. For example, in our advanced manufacturing, we brought students to actually go and actually play with the machines and have an opportunity to see what it was. So many of our students during that trip said, I didn't even know that there's careers in this. I only heard about welding. Had no idea what advanced. So I think really that exposure piece and the hands-on piece is really critical. And then also like, I think really just for staff, like we need ongoing professional development. Like this needs to be for staff and faculty, I think really on diversity, equity, inclusion. And really just, as the internet and AI is going to have even be more, I think, widespread and embedded in educational practices, and learning and student outcomes, it's really paramount that we are providing, the website and internet accessibility and Wi-Fi, including like if it's for online courses, making sure that there's online captions, recordings, to make it accessible for students. We need to be also evaluating the digital textbooks, I think, and then just ensuring students are aware of the resources available to them, and that we are really progress monitoring students' progress to provide really those interventions as early as possible. Because similarly, we are also seeing at Community College of Denver is more than matriculation, as you heard me earlier today, talking about we are seeing increases within concurrent enrollment, as well as our matriculation of students matriculating to CCD. But we are still struggling, and it's an area of growth for us, is the students persisting. after year one or after like even semester one to semester two, or persisting through graduation. And so I think we really need to make sure that we are doing a better job on our level as far as intervening as early as possible and making them feel a sense of community, a sense of belonging, and having the tools to feel confident that they know how to navigate and advocate for help when they knew it, when they need it, whether it's tutoring services, whether it's like financial aid assistance, whether it's like mentoring, like with our trio mentors, just ensuring that they know how to navigate that. And so to your second part of that question, I think really with the community, I think what stakeholders can really do is, I think, really just more collaborative efforts. I think, as I mentioned earlier, like I really think, education, it really paves the path to preventing injustice and improving public health and really safety for each other. And so I think that it's really, really critical that we are like making sure that we are collaborating with our like governmental organizations, nonprofit organizations, as well as stakeholders and industries. It's really important and commonplace now for students. They're looking for those opportunities where they can accelerate, gain a certificate or a degree as early and as quickly as possible. They want to work. They really have an entrepreneurial spirit. And I think that the more exposure, the more opportunities that we can make that happen and provide opportunities for funding, to correct, adequate funding costs to help support that is going to be really, I think, paramount in doing so.
Absolutely. And bridging that gap, and like you said, oh, I just thought it was welding. I mean, similarly, I was in the same boat. Like, you don't know if you're not in that space all the time, being the catalyst of that connection between a student or somebody who's interested in a general field and saying, oh my gosh, actually that's something I'd be really into. I think, and yeah, like you said, whether it's industries, organizations, just some people that are willing to explain what they do. Hey, this is a job, or this is an avenue that you can go down. I think that's great. And I love what you said about professional development. I think, especially, I mean, somebody could be in a role for 30 years and just go about day by day, but it's about who you meet, who you interact with, the lens that you decide to see the world in for that day or that hour or that minute, and the learning that you just take from social interaction through other individuals, other experiences. I love that you brought that up. I think continued education, even if you think you're the smartest of the smart, there's always something you can learn. So Tisha, I'll pass that same question over to you.
I mean, I think it was very well said by Dr. J. I really don't have much to add. I mean, it's really about, I love the public health and the public safety, because that is when everyone's needs are getting met, everyone feels safe, right? And that includes housing and education and food and, healthcare, all of those things. And that is definitely, I think, what education does for, hopefully, for many people. And it is definitely an effort that needs to be, this isn't one person or one, department or entity's responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility, because when everyone is, again, feels that when everyone's needs are getting met, it lessens the injustices and all of those things. I would say, I think one of the things I think that is gonna, what I hope to see in the future is that education is it's accessible, like picking up your cell phone, like everyone has one, right? And so it's also in these very different modalities that, if I want to take class at night and Dr. J needs to take it in the morning, it's okay. We can still both take that class, and there's a pathway for both of us to get through whatever certificate or degree that we want to get through. But I want it to be just second nature, like breathing, right? I just want it to be in that space. And it is about educating people about what is out there, because a lot of students, they don't know. And it's and the high schools, they can't do it by themselves, and we can't do it by ourselves, and the government can't. But it's going to take all of us to work together, because the gaps, we all fill a gap, all of us do in this role. So
Absolutely. And again, the collaboration there, and it takes a village. It absolutely takes a village. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time today. This was an amazing webinar. To our audience, if you missed a little bit of it, it's going to be posted on the Reach website. by tomorrow, and then you'll get a graphic of different resources, how you can get involved with either of our speakers and or their organizations. I will be working with them after this. But Tisha, Jay, thank you both so much for coming on today. You were both amazing, and I'm looking forward to staying connected with you both in the future.
Thank you. I had a great co-presenter. Amazing.
No, same. No, I was really great. Thank you. Thank you
Oh,
both. Really
yes.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Amazing,
it
you
was great.
guys.
Thank you.
Yes, have a great rest of your day. I'll be in
You-
touch.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.